Welcome to another episode of Physics Astronomy Guys. I'm Ian.
And I'm Alan.
And today we'll be talking about Pluto. We'll start off by giving you a little background information about Pluto, and then go into talking about why it's no longer considered a planet.
So Pluto is a Kuiper Belt object. The Kuiper Belt is an area about 40 AUs from the Sun, stretches out to about 60 AUs, where the density of dwarf planets and asteroids that are made mostly of ice and rock is a little higher than the rest of space. And so Pluto is about 40 AUs from the Sun, but it has a highly eccentric orbit, which means at perihelion it's only about 30 AUs from the Sun, and at aphelion it's about 50.
Pluto has a moon named Charon. It's kind of its moon, but more of its binary companion.
When it was discovered in 1976, it was assumed that it was its moon. But it was later found that Charon is actually a significant enough percentage of Pluto's mass that the barycenter is outside of Pluto.
And the barycenter is the place where the two bodies orbit around. And so you'll see this picture right now. It shows the barycenter and then a small circle showing where Pluto's orbit is, and then a larger kind of oval of where Charon's orbit is. And so they're both orbiting each other.
Earth and the moon also orbit around the barycenter. However, the moon is a very small percentage of the Earth's mass. It's only about a little over 1%. And so the barycenter is actually within the Earth's surface. If the moon happened to be about 30-40% more massive, the barycenter would actually be outside of the Earth, and the moon would be considered our binary partner.
There are also 3 more moons in the Pluto-Charon system: Nix, Hydra, and P4.
Nix and Hydra were discovered by the Hubble Space Telescope in 2005, and then P4 was discovered in 2011.
Nix and Hydra and P4 are much smaller than Pluto or Charon, so they don't affect the barycenter that much. Now we're going to talk about why Pluto is no longer a planet. You'll hear people talking about like they should bring Pluto back, and they don't like it how Pluto's no longer a planet, and that's maybe because they don't fully understand why Pluto is no longer a planet.
This is sort of just a classification thing, and in science we don't base classifications on emotion. We base it on scientific principles. And so in 2006, the International Astronomical Union set a set of parameters for an object to be considered a planet. And this happened to bump Pluto out of that classification.
Once they found Pluto and Charon, they knew it wouldn't be long before they found another Kuiper Belt object that was bigger than Pluto. And they figured they'd just keep discovering them. And then so in 2003, when they discovered Eris, which is bigger than Pluto, they decided they had to reclassify what a planet would be, or else they'd have all these minor bodies like Ceres, Pluto, and Eris that would all be planets.
And that's not necessarily a problem, but we want a method to classifying what planets are and have just a few bodies in the solar system. So if we include Pluto, we'll have to include all these other bodies, which we just typically don't want to.
And so that brings us to the classifications.
The first classification for an object to be considered a planet is that it has to be in orbit around the Sun.
Okay, Pluto checks off.
Every object in our solar system is in orbit around the Sun. The second classification is that it has to be in hydrostatic equilibrium, which means it has to have sufficient gravity to pull itself into the shape of a sphere.
Okay, Pluto.
Charon also fits this, but they're not entirely sure that it's due to its gravity. Haumea, which is also considered a dwarf planet, actually is oblated, but that's because it's spinning so fast. So it just has to have sufficient gravity to do so. Pluto also fits there. But then there's this third qualification that Pluto doesn't fit into. Or I'm sorry, it can't be in orbit around another body. It's another qualification. But then this final qualification is that it has to have cleared out its orbit. And this is where Pluto is no longer considered a planet.
When compared to the Earth, in Earth's orbit, Earth is 1.7 million times the mass of anything else in its orbit, whereas Pluto is only 0.07 times the mass of other objects in its orbit. So it hasn't really cleared out its orbit. The picture you're looking at now is a picture of Pluto. It's one of the highest resolution pictures we have. It's also in true color. It's not a very good picture because Pluto's so far away and so dim that we don't get much light to get a high resolution picture. And this goes for almost all the Kuiper Belt objects. So right now there's a spacecraft called New Horizons that's on its way to Pluto in the Kuiper Belt to finally get high resolution pictures from Pluto.
It's just going to be a flyby. It's going so fast that there's no possible way Pluto would have sufficient gravity to capture it. So it can only be a flyby. And it's going to have about a 6-month window where it'll be close enough to Pluto that it can get better resolution images than the Hubble Space Telescope. And when it makes its closest approach, we should be able to get a very good map of Pluto. It'll make its closest approach around July of 2015.
Okay, that ends our episode of Physics Astronomy, guys.